cloud. So when you think about questions and the type of question, this is the thing that you should be thinking about, right? It's governance questions.
What is the difference between an executive style question and a board style question?
So this is how I want you to think about this. And by the way, happy to share slides with people if you want to sit and read all of this all over again.
Hey,
Okay.
Naomi,
Yes.
quick question on that previous slide. Sustainability, is that with respect to sustaining performance or?
Yes, sustainability
Okay,
of business.
got it.
Yeah, not
Got it.
the.
Okay.
Good point. Good point. So principle one, ask from a place of curiosity. You have to be curious. And if you guys haven't read my top 10 attributes of highly successful board members, it's on my website. It's probably running around somewhere in a LinkedIn post as well. Please read them. Being curious is one of them. So you have to think, am I being curious? Is this a question that I'm asking, or is it an interrogation, right? You need to have a calm attitude as well when you ask them. You need to recognize the difference between contributing and impressing. You cannot bring ego into the room. I hear this way too often. And by the way, anyone here, please use the chat to ask any questions. And actually, maybe I can't answer them, but maybe someone in the group who sits on multiple boards, I know you've got a lot of people here, maybe they'd like to answer it. If I'm working the slides here. So feel free to ask any questions as we go, but recognizing the difference, low ego really does help when you're asking questions. Principle two, stay strategic. There are only 5 principles, by the way. Here's the difference. Operational question. Hey, why did marketing spend increase by 12%? That's an operational question. What's a board level question? It would be, what evidence do we have that this investment will strengthen long-term market position, right? We're thinking long-term, we're thinking strategy. So again, think about the types of questions you want to ask in board meetings. We'll practice them in a minute. Number 3 is you want to create perspective. So an example would be, what are we not discussing that we should be? This is a very good one. Okay, it's not actually the question, or it could be potentially. But another question is, what else? I hear this asked a lot. What else, right? Like just asking. What would a competitor say is our biggest vulnerability? Creating perspective. Another creating perspective question is, if this decision fails, what is the most likely reason? Instead of, oh, it's a great idea, what do you think we'll get out of it, right? Maybe think through the risks associated with a failure. And then finally, what does success look like in you put 3 years, but could be 1 year, 6 months from now. Some decisions are very short term, right? So a vision for the future, guiding people's thought processes. Principle number 4, timing matters.
Yeah.
Okay, what does timing matter mean? Well, timing matter means that we don't really want to we want to listen carefully during those meetings. We want to make sure that we are not dominating the conversation with our questions. I remember I spoke to a client recently and they were asking lots and lots of questions, and they said, I just stopped because I felt like I was dominating the room with my questions. But hey, if it's an area of expertise, I think that makes sense. But sometimes you have to think about how you're asking questions and whether your timing is on point. I hear this from a lot of board members, and I've seen it myself in boardrooms, where sometimes the person that says nothing and then suddenly asks one great question, that's sometimes the best question of the whole board meeting. So sometimes listening before you ask is important. And of course, by the way, this goes back to reading the materials, being accountable, making sure that you're prepared before that meeting too. Principle number 5, final principle. And get ready, we're going to start doing the case studies in just a minute. So simple questions. Clarity over complexity. Okay? First of all, when you think about clarity, don't use buzzwords, don't use abbreviations. Be careful not to use very local industry words that are going to throw people off, but sometimes they're very simple questions. So let's say it's an acquisition. How will we know in 2 years whether this acquisition created shareholder value? Or maybe employee engagement dropped. Could this be an early indicator of a larger cultural or leadership issue? What are we seeing? And so these are some of the ways that you want to think about your questions. It's not just asking a question, but actually thinking a little bit more deeply about them. Okay, so now what I'd like you to do is jump into the chat. Make sure you got the chat open because we're going to run through some scenarios, some case studies. Okay. Now, these case studies are very open-ended. Okay. We don't have time to read through a long case study. Plus, I just want you all to be thinking through the problem at hand instead of thinking about the detail. It doesn't really matter. But think about your role as a board member. So we're all sitting on a board. And the first scenario is that there is a potential acquisition discussion happening. Okay. Our company, we are on the board of a company and they want to acquire a company. So throw some questions in the chat. What questions would you ask? Just generally, what would you be thinking about? Again, we just saw one on the other page. What is the value of this acquisition to the business? What other questions might we want to ask? So throw your ideas into the chat, thinking through an M&A transaction. Good point, Tony. Why? Right? Like, why are we doing this? Of course, we don't have the details, right? So don't worry about that. What are the cultural attributes? What are the cultural attributes of, I've just lost it, the other company they were attracted to? Oh, perfect. Okay. So have we tested for culture? How will the potential deal be valued in the long term? In the long term, Jerry, maybe short term. Why do you want to do this particular acquisition and why now? That's a good one. Brooke said, why now? Right? That's really important. Why is this a sudden move? Is this aligned with our business strategy? Kellyanne, yes, spot on, right? So where is the strategy? Let's go back to the strategy. Was this unsolicited? Perfect. How did this come about, right? Given our goal to improve ROI over the next 3 years, how does this achieve these goals? Nice one, Andrew. So again, we're thinking long term. Will this sustain capital? Think about the money, right? Do we have the money? Is this scalable? What are the synergies between our company and the target? What problem does this acquisition solve that we can't solve organically? Excellent. Really good questions. Joshua said, as a security professional, I would ask about their security policies. Do they have any? And do they follow them? That might be going a little bit into the weeds, but you could say, hey, can we maybe have a report, right, on some of the security governance, the audit, right, of potentially their cybersecurity. And then they might say, well, we don't have one. That might be your answer. Who from our management team will be responsible, and does this person have capacity, right? Does this fit with us? Yeah. Have we just considered other options? What's our walk away? What's the downside if we don't make it? There you go. There's a long-term vision question. What's the downside if we don't do this? Due diligence. Who may be competing? Who are we competing against for the deal? Was this company previously acquired? And if so, why? What's the history there of the acquisition? Now, don't forget, all this information may be given to you, but certainly you want to be thinking about that long-term vision. What is this M&A transaction for? Okay. The most popular topic of 2026. Of course, this would not be a good case study if we didn't have AI in it. So let's talk about generative AI. Invest or not to invest? Risk or reward? What questions would you ask? It's a leadership team and they're deliberating. They don't know what to do. So what questions are we going to ask about AI? Or about, you can also flip this and say innovation, technology. What types of questions are going to be here? What are we trying to fix? There we go. What are we solving? Yep. What is the actual problem, right? Like, do we see, is there a strategy, right? Do we have a strategy? What are the resources needed? Yep. To make an assessment. Very good. So Bill's got the right at the beginning end. So how do we even assess this? What do we think is needed? Quantifying the benefits. Right. Yep. Are we early? Are we late? Right? Are we early? Are we late? Does it tie into our business strategy? Always. Do you notice a lot of you ROI is coming up a lot, right? Which is a very good question. And then the strategy question comes up a lot, which is, is it in line with strategy? What's the cost associated? Are we going to benefit? Data privacy, IP, are we ready? Is the workforce ready? Right? Because I think that happens a lot too. I hear competition. Great question from Brooke. What's the competition? What are we thinking about? Is this going to put us ahead of the game? Or is this just a vanity spend? What's the cost of not doing it? Can we even quantify that? Ethics, usage policy. Well, I think for a lot of boards, and I don't know if anyone's on a board at the moment, you might be even having this topic, or this topic may be even coming up in your board meetings, but certainly the question about policy, procedure, how do we use it, is definitely on the minds of boards at the moment. So I'm hearing that a lot. How will this change our customer perception and experience, right? Will it improve it? I don't know if anybody's seeing this as well, as seeing a lot of companies trying to fix removing the administrative side of the business. And I think maybe there should be a different focus on value creation for the client, value creation for our members or our clients or our customers or whoever it might be. And by the way, if anyone has any answers to these questions, how's the competition perceived as plausible, external stakeholder? Right, exactly. Customers, stakeholders. What is the AI governance in the company? I know a lot of you are actually doing a lot of work on this within your boards, and clarity of purpose is just really important. So we can have big ideas, but do we want to move to actually putting this into place? All right, sounds like you guys are all very clued up on this one. All right, we're going to move on. Next scenario, the CEO, we've done some work and the CEO is underpaid, but company's not doing so well. What questions are you going to ask? Okay, so maybe this is an executive session, right? An executive session is where just the board of directors are meeting. No executives, no leaders, no CEO. So what should you do next? What's the philosophy? What is it made up of, right? Could be LTIPs, could be regular pay, could be a private company. It could be the owner has decreased profit margin and industry trend, right? Good point. Is everybody down? Are we all going down? What are the consequences of not changing the CEO's comp? Very good question, right? Like we see how we're thinking about, like, what do we even need to change it? What's the impact on the business? Are we going to lose this CEO, or are they just going to be miserable and create a bad culture because they're not happy? And we've all seen that happen, I'm sure. Did we clearly state expectations? Good one, Sharon. So again, where are we at the moment? Is this just come out of nowhere? How is the current CEO comp tied to the profit margin? Good point. Should it even be tied to it, right? Should it be tied to some profits? What does underpaid mean? Well, probably the CEO that's made that choice. What was discussed at the time of placement, right? So all of this could have been discussed right at the start. So Sarah, good point. Sarah's point is, maybe this should be part of the onboarding. Maybe this should be part of the discussions that we have with the CEO when they come into the company, as long as they're coming from the outside. As in they're not like an owner, a founder, or something like that. Good point. We better, yeah. If we don't get the CEO pay in check, we might need the CEO succession plan to be in place. So are we willing to lose them? Are we willing to lose them? I've heard of many. What is the CEO's plan to improve performance, right, Harry? Let's throw it back at the CEO, right? Let's throw it back at the CEO and see what their opinions are on it. So this executive session is going well. We've got a lot of good ideas here and a lot of good ways that we can. Has there been added responsibility that we've not taken into consideration? Very good. What would justify a pay increase? What is a CEO plan to, well, we did that. Do we think that the downturn in business is internally or externally focused? Right. What about culture of the business, right? And how does that impact? What is the impact of the culture? And how will that affect what's going on? Okay. Moving on, next subject. So we're doing well at a board, as a board, by the way. We're solving lots of great problems here in the company. Next problem we've got is there is a significant investment presented to acquire, purchase a new CRM. It's a software. It's going to be off the shelf for sales and client accounts in the business, but it's a pretty large investment and it's come to the board. What questions are you going to ask the leadership team? Don't forget, don't go too detailed, right? We don't need to know which platform, what are their rates, what are think big picture. How can we quantify the benefits? It's the ROI. What are the expectations for improved performance if installed, right? What alternative solutions have you considered? Would there be teething problems? Uma, 100% there probably will be. If anyone's had a new CRM installed, I think I've had about 40 installed over the last 20 years. So we know how that goes. Margin of error, the existing one that drives this proposal. What is the margin of error? Right. So maybe what are we replacing? What's the problem that we're replacing? How much? What are the benefits, the downside? Is there an internal remedy that could come close to the proposed results without incurring a large expense? How long will the company support the software? How robust is our current client data? Good. These are good questions. What are the risks, downside of not investing in this? Exactly. What are we going to do if we don't do this? And is there a better way of doing it? It is often one step back to get two steps forward. That can happen. What's the sales team thought? What do they think? What's the head of sales thinking? Is the head of sales driving this, right? Is the head of sales driving it? Is there a better way of doing it? Anticipating any talent requirements? No doubt, Sharon, again, these platforms are never that intuitive. You have to get trainers and you have to get data transfers and all kinds of things. And what is the impact over the next year or two, right? Let's think long term. If it fails, how challenging will it be to disentangle it and replace it? I don't know if anyone's had experience in that. It is not easy. How are we going to finance it? How long has the vendor been in business? That might be more of a detailed question, but I think it's still relevant, right? Are we dealing with some company that no one's heard of, or is this a company that is quite well known? Okay, good. Solving more problems on this board. We've got 2 more problems we've got to solve. So get ready to ask great questions. Oh, go ahead, Michelle.
No, I didn't realize you wanted to wait to the end. I can wait. Thank you.
Sure. Do you want to put it in the chat? Is it a question or?
Well, it's just even in the middle of this, like asking all of these great questions, which are great, but it's like, how do you ever this is hard for me as an operator, but come to a decision if you're just asking a bunch of questions.
It's a very good point. So the role of the board is not to do the work, right? The role of the board is to, because they've already decided that they want to buy this CRM, right? So the role of the board is to challenge the thought process around doing it and challenge the idea, because sometimes things have been thought through, but sometimes they have not. So your role is to also think long term. Executives sometimes think long term, but I think all of us know when we're an executive, we're running from meeting to meeting, day to day. We're thinking month to month. We're thinking quarter to quarter, because that's when our numbers come out, right? Like the sales team, are we going to make our numbers for the month? Are we going to make our numbers for the next quarter? We're not necessarily thinking long term. And so what this does is it helps to reframe a problem. And this is an approval that needs to come through the board, Michelle. So you need to make sure that all of the angles have been considered before they come through and they say, okay, we're going to go forward with this, because this investment could take the whole company down if it's a failure. Let's say it's a huge investment that's going to require capital and all kinds of things.
Thank you. That makes perfect sense. It's just a little hard, but to hold back, asking a question, but also expecting the C-suite to have thought through some of the questions And then
So what we're doing today, Michelle, and everybody else here, we don't have a scenario. I don't have a PowerPoint, right? I can't tell you all the details about the thing. So all we're doing is we're trying to ask high level questions, not getting into the weeds, ignoring all the detail and just going high level. So whether they've bought Salesforce or they've bought Pipedrive or they've bought some other product, it doesn't matter, and it shouldn't matter. Actually, you shouldn't be asking those questions anyway. It should be more around, well, what's the vision for this? How is this going to work? But no, it's a good point, right? Like we're just testing and we're trying to practice asking these level of questions. So let's look at our next problem. So we've got low morale and low engagement going on in the business. These people look miserable. Okay, so the culture is not great. Let's say, okay, again, executive session. All right, it's an executive session. So no CEO, no CFO, it's just us. Okay. What questions are we going to ask? What are we going to start thinking about for this? We understand that there is low morale and that there is low engagement. That's official. Those numbers are for sure certain. Is this siloed? When is this happening? Do we have an engaged HR team? Like, who's running HR? Do we know who the CHRO is? What about, when did this start? Did we start to see this? Does this line up with a certain moment in the company? Do we know why? What did the employee survey reveal? We'd obviously take a look at that. How did we identify the low morale? Is this anecdotal, right? Is this low morale a recent shift, or is it a long-standing condition? Have we seen this before, or is it just because we laid some people off, right? Good points. Matthew, assuming this came out of the survey, so how long has there been low morale? Everyone's talking about the length of time. I think that's very important, right? Like, is this a long-term problem? And is everyone thinking if it's a long-term problem, might be more leadership, right? It's more leadership than potentially an action or a situation that the company is going through. When did we as a board see the last engagement survey? What is the root cause? When last was an employee benchmark survey conducted? What are the company HR policies? Interestingly, nobody's talked about the CEO. Oh, Sarah just did. There we go. Is the CEO the right person to be leading the company? What could the reason be? Is it something related to the CEO? We're having an executive session, don't forget. What are the trends that we're seeing? Is everybody in the industry a bit miserable? Is it across everyone? What feedback do we have in hand? What is the incentive programs? Who's leading the business? Okay. So as board director, your job is to oversee the hiring and firing of the CEO. And so if there's low morale and low engagement due to a lack of leadership, then it is your responsibility to make those decisions, those hard decisions. So I would take a good look at the C-level and the C-level group and ask questions about what are we thinking? And is this, like you said, has this just recently happened? Okay, and to end the last one we have, and I know a few of you on the call today have actually had these situations. So I'd love to hear from people who have actually been in this situation. But this can happen. It can actually happen in public and private companies. But it is the notorious activist investor. So our company is under fire for low quarterly results. You can assume as many quarterly results are down as possible. So we got an activist investor. That could be on the publicly traded company side. So Carl Icahn is knocking on our door with a face like this, lion, or we're a private company and one of our investors is just annoyed at the fact that they're not seeing the growth that they'd like to see in our private company. Great. Have they communicated their expectations? Well, what is it that we should be seeing? Well, I think we should be seeing profits, but where is the activist? Where are they wrong? Where are they right? What are they saying, right? Do we agree? How many quarters? Okay, let's, Uma, just for the sake of it, let's say it's 3 in a row. Is it possible to communicate our future plans for increasing results? Yep. Forecast, not budget. There you go. What are we going to be doing in the future? Can we go and speak to them about the future? When was the last time we had a dialogue with the activist? How is this going to come about? What do we understand are the terms? What about who's speaking to the investor? On a board, generally, you'll have at a publicly traded company, it will be the chair who will talk to shareholders. You won't have everybody on the board talking to shareholders. But what if you're at a private company and you sit next to the shareholder? The shareholder is your like the person sitting next to you, right? And they're kicking up a fuss because they're not seeing the returns that they expected to see. So who is an appropriate and credible independent director on our board who can engage? Exactly. So what is our long-term vision for this investor? How much do they own? What do we want to, who's going to be the shareholder relation, right, on our board? Is there anybody here who engages with shareholders on a regular basis? They want to jump in? But this is definitely a very high stress, high risk environment, and it often creates a lot of disturbance in the company. Jerry, do you want to jump in and give your thoughts? Or Matthew, I saw you unmuted. Go ahead. Anybody who engages with shareholders, they want to jump in and just tell us how they would deal with something like this? Go ahead.
As a multi-decade experienced activist investor, I can at least provide input from the side of the investor. The problem usually occurs is that the board is not up to the point of creating escalation. The board is not deployed or effectively communicated that they've deployed an investor owner mindset in the boardroom. And so in order to address this and recover from it, a board needs to have at least one, if not more, credible independent directors who are capable to sit down and engage in a sincere and honest manner to hear out the activists, their thesis, and what their concerns are, and to bring that back to a board in executive session and with management to address these issues. Some things the board and the activist investor are not going to be on the same page, but you have to have an open and honest conversation that's objective inside of the boardroom on these issues.
How bad can it get, Andrew? Could it get really bad?
Well, and the number one fear of a board member is to be sued, but the number two fear of every board member is to be personally called out in a public proxy contest where their professional reputation will be permanently damaged and they'll never be invited to serve on another public board again. So I would say it can get really bad.
We don't want that. Avril, go ahead.
I was going to chime.
Oh, you're on mute.
Okay. I was going to chime in with what was just said. It's really important to understand, what does the activist want? How many times have they tried to approach you? What is something that you could do to, in good faith, address some of their concerns? Because it usually doesn't come all at once. You can understand that there are ways that this information could be getting to the board or getting to investor relations. And if we're not asking and if we're not responding, that's where it gets uglier, I think. It's just really a matter of, are they saying that you don't have someone on the board that can address AI? Are you going to do it? Are you going to let them make you do it? People are using AI now to see the recent education of board members. If your folks are not going to get the new information, that's another way that they can go after you. And I think it's just the dialogue has to be there.
April, with all respect, the activist isn't going to engage on micro issues such as specifically AI, where their focus is going to be, what their focus is going to be on, which could involve AI, is capital allocation.
Yes. Okay, I understand that. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear.
Is the capital being allocated with an investor owner mindset? Think of a private company and who's on the board? Investor owners. That results in alignment of compensation, cost control, and capital allocation discipline. Company goes public, many of them get Alzheimer's, the investor owner mindset leaves the boardroom. Frankly, they had too many specialists, special interest directors who are siloed and they lose the generalist and investor owner mindset. And that's what ends up causing operational metrics to fail. Market's fairly efficient, value gaps occur. Activist investors get very upset. Their investment is not being maximized and value created, and they escalate.
It can go
I
in all sorts
appreciate
of
that.
ways. Matt, go ahead.
Thanks, Naomi. We'll echo what Andrew said. I think the point that I would make is that it's just about the communication. We had a couple of examples. Once we learned that an investor group was not see the value or the investor mindset coming out of the board, and they raised these issues, and we learned from that. Another time we communicated with the board and just learned that it was a recalcitrant individual or large family holding that didn't like what happened to someone who used to work here. But the point of both of those is that it was communication, which solved a lot of problems. So by not communicating, you're not going to learn. If you do an outreach, you'll learn either the good thing, the thing that was not material to your business. So,
yep. And as a couple of you have shared, like it starts a long time before the activist comes in, right? Like it's about building relationships with them a long time before. Daryl, go ahead.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Oh, hi. First of all, I don't see activists as evil. They just have a different perspective, right? So I think listen is important. A lot of us mentioned that. To listen, open communication is important. If they have a point, I think one should listen, one as the board, and perhaps could leverage that point, have a dialogue with the management. And sometimes the activists really try to drive to get in the board seats themselves. They wanted to become the board member, and public company don't always have the open position. So they activate this for themselves. Overall, I think take it objectively, and the last resort is always have the law firm stand by to facilitate any additional discussion or mediation effort before it gets very ugly, like Andrew said earlier.
Sure. Sorry, Di, I just saw your name says DAL, I think, or something. I don't know. I think it might be just, or maybe my eyesight is going, but it looks like an L.
I might have typed it
That's
very
all right. No,
quickly.
it's
Otherwise, we'll be a
DAR.
Zoom user, so apology.
Oh, good. No, apologies from me. Hey, Bill, go ahead.
Well, I'm hesitant to chime in when you got such experienced professionals like Andrew on here, but something that I think maybe we need to even back up even before the activists ever approach the company, and that's the board should have an activist mindset in the boardroom before even being approached by an activist. And a lot of times a best practice could be to periodically put the company through an exercise of, if you were going to be approached by an activist, where would your blind spots be? So Andrew may have mentioned that, but that would be something else that I would advise.
Absolutely. Building those relationships way before any of those problems happen, right? And often you'll find activist investors won't even be around when everything's going well, right? They come in when things are not going so well. Would anyone else like
they
to?
require a value. There's three things. An activist is looking for a value gap, that the securities are trading at an intrinsically undervalued level. They are looking for an operational gap, basically operational metrics and performance that needs to be and can be fixed. And last but not least, they require and look for a path. The securities are owned by a 50% family block owner. There is no path to achieve change. So all three things are what are required, needed, and sought after for a shareholder to become activated. Any shareholder can become an activist. So don't just think it's a professional activist is the only ones you need to look out for. You need to look out for any owner who chooses not to be passive and who become engaged. And you should engage with them ahead of time, and that will bridge your gap and your differences. They may not be right all the time. Certainly many times their time horizons differ from the board of directors. These things are resolvable via settlement unless you go into the bunker and you don't engage and you just set the lawyers up You let the missiles fly by hiring and sticking the lawyers on them. That will result in your fight.
Andrew, what about in a family-owned business where you have infighting and owners of the business? How complicated does it get then?
It can become very complicated when you're dealing with a privately held business. You're dealing with simply state law and fiduciary duty issues. It can resolve. It's harder to resolve because there are emotional family baggage going along with it, and where one part of the family doesn't want the other part of the family to win. You have the issues that it's the illiquid security. No one can get out. It's like a Roach Motel. You can get in, but you can't get out. How do you resolve that? Who is in the power position of, and are minority shareholders being abused to the point that there's been a breach of fiduciary duty? And you are getting involved with the lawyers. There's no shareholder vote or proxy action you can have to potentially alter the power dynamic of who elects the board members. It's all going to boil down to who's got 51% of the vote.
Has anyone been in a situation like this? The next couple of minutes, if anyone's got a story to tell.
Well, this is Jerry. I'm involved in a banking business that's been majority owned in the same family for 127 years. So it is very interesting family business. And as a matter of fact, there's lawsuits going on right now. So as a board, it gets very tricky. You talked about shareholders expecting results, and they certainly do. It's also interesting. They want independent corporate governance when it's convenient for them. When you support their position, they like the independent governance, but when you challenge them, not so much, because they remind you they're the majority shareholder. So it's almost an internal activist. I do have a quick question for you. You said earlier that, and I totally agree with it, you don't want, as a board member, to be dominating the conversation, right? But what happens when the majority shareholder, who's the vice chair of the board, is the one dominating the conversation to the point where it's even hard for a board member to ask a question? How do you tactfully handle that to make sure you're getting your objectives accomplished?
I say this all the time. Boards are made up of people, and we don't always work well together, and we don't always have all these attributes. Like I said, you can read over the best or the most effective board director. This is what they look like, but they don't all look like that, and they don't all act like that. Again, would love some thoughts from people, but my advice would personally be you have two options. Either it's to politely talk to the chair, talk to the CEO, right? Politely make yourself heard. And if things do not stop and things continue, you may not want to be on that board anymore. That may be the ultimate choice that you make, which is that you don't want to be in that environment. And I've seen people drop boards like that all the time. There's a values discrepancy, there's a personality mismatch. I talk to people all the time who say, there's a really difficult board member on our board, right? And sometimes you can deal with it, and sometimes you're not the person to deal with it, it's the chair. But to your point, if the person that's meant to deal with it is the problem, then you come up against some hard questions that you have to ask yourself at that point. Has anyone been in a situation like that? I've known many people to be in that situation. A strong board chair is critical, yes, but they're not all perfect, right?
Yeah. I have something similar like that. A conversation with the board chair truly solved it, right? So she had the conversation separately. So you do see some improvement. But if the board chair cannot turn the ship, that's when I will ask the question, is this the right board for me? And I think another one is the committee chair is also critical. Committee chair can really set the tone for the entire board, leading by the example. So work close with your committee chair as well.
I don't want to pull you up into the big screen if you don't want to, Dennis, but Dennis Kagan, I actually interviewed him for my podcast, and I'm going to be interviewing him again. It's a PDA event. I'll share the link with you all, but we're going to be talking in August. But one of the things that Dennis told me in his last podcast that we did was that he thinks he's been fired himself from more boards than most people have been on. So Dennis, why would somebody leave a board? What would be the reason to leave a board?
Well, of course, it depends on whether it's a privately held company or a publicly traded company. So there's factors there as well. But the first reason to leave, to volunteer, and again, some I voluntarily left, and some I was thrown off of, but many I was thrown off, most of the time by venture capitalists who had gained some degree of control either directly over the company or some degree of control over the CEO, and who was encouraged to get rid of me, mostly because my opinion tended to differ on occasion from those opinions of the venture capital investors, because typically I'm an independent director representing the founders in most situations. So the best reason to quit is if there's something you really don't, well, obviously, if there's something going on that's illegal, immoral, unethical, that you just don't agree with, and the rest of the board doesn't seem, or the management or the ownership doesn't seem to be in agreement with you, then that's a time to exit as quickly as possible and hope that you were smart enough to make sure that you had D&O insurance in the first place. The other reason to resign is if it's clear that you're not wanted there anymore and your opinion is not valued going forward, then why would you want to stay around? Certainly, some people might want to stay around for the compensation, but most people joining boards, at least my colleagues and people that I deal with, they're not on the board for the compensation. They're on the board to pay it forward because it's interesting, because they're like associated with the other board members, etc. So, but if for some reason your opinion isn't wanted or isn't seriously enough considered, and you're outvoted enough, then maybe it's just time to reduce your level of frustration and just resign from the board. So I guess the other reason would be if you really don't like one or more of the other people on the board and it's a disagreeable experience just to be on the board, I guess that would technically qualify as a third reason. Often when I join boards, my biggest consideration is who else is on the board, who's there that I can learn something from and so forth. So, or if I join a board, sometimes my thought is, well, who do I know that can add value to the company that I could recruit for the board as well? So it's a long answer to your short story.
No, that's great. And you're right, Dennis, there's so many reasons, but I think for a lot of the times you're right, you get pushed out, but ethical, moral, all of these things. If the business, and to Jerry's point, right, if somebody is not working in the same way or the same style, and it's not working for you and you're not able to get things done, you certainly don't want to be in that business if things are going to tank, right? And I know you've told me stories of companies where you've done exactly that and they have gone in the direction that you said they were going to go in. So sometimes you can advise and you can ask these great questions and you can give great advice, but if the company's not willing to take it, you just walk away, right? So, okay, well, listen, this has been great. I just put a link in the chat to the live event. It's not until August 12th, but sign up now, put it in your calendars, 5 p.m. Eastern. Dennis and I are actually going to be live from a podcast studio, so we're going to be videoing that. Oh, you didn't know that?
Well, I did, but just remind me, where's the studio?
I'll send you an email.
Okay.
It's the same. It should be the same one. Fingers crossed.
Oh, okay.
But be in the studio, so we'll be coming in live, but you can jump in, you can ask questions and all the rest, but we're going to dive into a lot of topics. And Dennis has been on over, 5 boards or something?
Currently 74, and I'm on 6 right now.
But who's counting, right? Who's counting? So he's got a long history of being on boards, but also has been on some really interesting boards. And he's on an interesting board at the moment, which is a coffee company, Bones Coffee. So go check that out as well. But listen, I will see you every 2 weeks. I do this meeting, different topic every 2 weeks. Just sometimes it's things that I'm thinking about that I think are important. And other times I bring in guests and speakers. So please join. It's the same link. You just sign up for the next meeting that's coming up on July something or other, July 21st. So I will see you back here then. Thank you everyone for joining. See you soon.
Thanks, Naomi.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. Thanks, Jen.